Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson and welcome to Construction Project Management Principles. Today we're going to be talking about resilience and how we can use resilience even when our projects fail. Because you know what? They will fail. They're not going to always be successful. And that's something that we should understand with careers in construction, because a lot of projects have issues. It may not be our particular problem. It may be caused by a variety of things. Let's take a look at this, and we'll talk about the Stockdale Paradox and how that can help as a tool to build your resilience. So, as I said, not all of your projects will be successful. You might have gotten in with a client that it's just very, very difficult to work with. Not everyone is easy to work with, and some clients can be Nightmare on Elm Street, perhaps. They're just very, very difficult for a variety of reasons. There's a saying that goes something like this: you can have a good contract and you can have a lousy client, and that still will not make this an enjoyable experience. You can have a lousy contract and a great client, and it can go pretty good. Of course, you don't want to have a lousy client and a lousy contract. That's going to be really bad. But keep that in mind. There's a lot to pre-qualifying your clients and trying to get the right ones. But even still, I've had opportunities that I've taken and thought they would be good, but the client wasn't what I expected. And the client was actually kind of knew what they were doing about it. So it's not always that you can pre-qualify your way out of these things. But that's okay. These things will happen and you will learn from them. Difficult consultants, same kind of thing. Some consultants are really difficult. And we've talked about this in other videos. Maybe they have a history of where they've been burned in the past. And so they're really, really sort of, adversarial because they want to make sure they don't get into that position. And there's things you can do to prevent that, but even still, it can be sometimes very difficult working with some consultants, just as they have difficulty working with some GCs. As I said, they've been burned in the past. So I'm not picking on them specifically, for sure. Problematic trades. There's that Pareto principle, that 20-80, and 20% of the trades are going to take 80% of your time. It could be that they're a new trade that you haven't worked with before. It could be a company that you work with before that's generally very good, but whoever you're dealing with from them on your project makes it very difficult. Or it could be that great company that you've worked with in the past is all of a sudden going through some difficult times, be it management, be it financial, be it that they're too busy. There can be a lot of reasons at root there, but it can definitely lead your project astray if you're not careful. And sometimes it will take you by surprise. Same with unreliable vendors. Well, that would be coming out of COVID, post-COVID, supply chain issues, but pre-COVID, way post-COVID, it's always been there, right? Supply chain issues. And you get promised something and it's something that is a critical activity related to that, and it really puts the kibosh on your ability to complete the project on time. And if you've got a client that is really time sensitive, that can mean your project really hasn't been successful. It's unexpectedly technically difficult. Hey, you were in pursuit of this project. You really, really wanted it as a company. Maybe you were involved in the pursuit, going after that project, and you kind of got that planning fallacy that Daniel Kahneman talks about in Thinking Fast and Slow, and you thought everything would go perfect, but it turns out that there's a lot more technically difficult things than you had accounted for. And that could mean you're off on price, that could mean you're off on time, that could mean you're off on quality, that can mean all three of them, which again, that might lead you to not being successful. Not really, some of it is luck. There is some luck factor to things. People don't like to think that, but there is definitely some luck involved. People that have gotten into home building and building on speculation, right? Well, if the first house that you invest all of your money in to buy this property and to build it and sell it happens to happen right in the middle of a financial recession, that is real estate focused, talk to the people from 2008, particularly in a lot of places in the US, then you just hit it at the wrong time. It might be that you didn't do anything wrong. It's just the timing. And others, if you're just coming out of a time period where now things are starting to accelerate and you do it, you could make a lot of mistakes and still have a very successful project. And I think there's a lot of people that, they go through a time period where things have been relatively easy because the market's been growing and they were in the right place at the right time. But then when they hit a tough time, which, as I'm saying, not all of your projects will be successful, you've got to learn very quickly, and you have to be resilient. You have to build some of those skills. It's not always going to be a uphill ride, like that enjoyable ride. Downhill, I guess, would be an easier way to say it. We all make honest mistakes, and they could be a combination of all the things: who you procured, what information you communicated, a decision you made that went south for a variety of reasons. So these things do happen. And so there are reasons why, of course, not all construction projects will be successful. And so the Stockdale Paradox that I wanted to bring into this discussion is from Jim Collins in the book Good to Great. And I use this in a lot of courses that I do in construction business management. The book is from, I think, 1999, 2000-ish. And so it's been around for a while. It's really an excellent book because it looks at companies that were, how did they get from good to great? And one of the things that Collins noticed was in a lot of the leadership of those companies, they had this Stockdale Paradox. Not that they knew what the Stockdale Paradox was, but in his discussion with Jim Stockdale, he came up with this, that it made a lot of sense for building resilience in these companies because it's tough. If you're going to be a leader, whether you're a project leader, whether you're a business leader, it's tough at times. And how do you lead through those tough times? And so Jim Collins, he talked to Jim Stockdale, and Jim Stockdale was a prisoner of war during Vietnam. He stayed at what they called the Hanoi Hilton. They were tortured. It was not good times. And many of the people did not make it out. Many of the POWs, prisoners of war, did not make it out. And so Collins asked him, which prisoners did not make it out? Oh, that's easy. The optimists. So that was Stockdale's response. Oh, they were the ones who said, we're going to be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and Christmas would go. Then they'd say, we're going to be out by Easter. And Easter would come and Easter would go. And then Thanksgiving. And then it would be Christmas again. And they died of a broken heart, right? And that was sort of what he saw during that process. And, Stockdale is one of the most highly decorated individuals, highly decorated officers in the history of the Navy. And you can sort of read on about all of the different awards and decorations that he received during his distinguished service. And so he did a lot of things while he was in there, a lot of things that would help the others. He was the most senior person that was a prisoner of war in the Hanoi Hilton. And he did a lot of things covertly. He did a lot of things that would help to build the morale of the teams, right? And as I said, this was all laid out very well in one of the chapters in Good to Great, referred to as the Stockdale Paradox. And so what he said was, you must maintain unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties. And at the same time, have the discipline to confront the brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. Now, you can think about the tough position that Stockdale was in. It's much tougher than what we face on a construction project. We may not feel that way, but it is. But with that, we do face tough positions, right? And you can also use that viewpoint, right? To think about it, to have the discipline to confront the brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. And that unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end. You will get through this project. Whether the project itself fails or not, you will end up getting through it. So that can be a very positive aspect of reframing the way that you're thinking about the project. And also, it tells us a lot about, understanding current reality. figuring out where you're at. And we'll talk about that. All right. So another question that some of you may ask is, what is the role of faith? All right. And so his response was, and he was referring to the camp. So he had men need some kind of personal philosophy, and it was 1967. So everybody in the camp was male. So I'm just saying people need some kind of personal philosophy to endure what the Vietnam POWs endured. For many, it is religion. For many, it is a patriotic cause. For some, it is simply a question of doing their jobs, even though the result of confinement as a POW may not seem necessarily fair. So having faith, he's referring to it not necessarily just only being religious, right? So, but whatever discipline or whatever faith you may be or not, you can find something in there, a philosophy, a personal philosophy about things. Stockdale was very stoic, so he followed a lot of the Stoics' philosophies, which date back 2,000 years, which aren't religious specific, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of find your purpose in there, and that will help you to get through this. I always find that if you can reframe things and look at it from a different perspective, it takes you out of that, either being overly optimistic or being overly pessimistic or really getting down and that this is never going to end. And, you have that broken heart or depressive side that Stockdale referred to some of the POWs. So building resilience in construction, some points that I thought I'd bring up. This is like a very big topic, right? And it includes a lot of other elements to it. We could get into Angela Duckworth's grit. We could get into a lot of other different viewpoints that have been brought in. But know where you are now on a project. So if things aren't going well, you got to really figure out, well, where are we now? Where are we? And where are we supposed to be? Really catching up with that instead of just reacting to everything all the time. And after a while, that just gets, just grinds you, right? But really understand, where are we, and what got us here, right? Really sort of, what are the things? Identifying the 8 areas of waste that you may have run into in trying to, run this project effectively. And the 8 areas of waste, you can look at one of my lean videos on that, but essentially defects, overproduction, wait time, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, doing more than you're supposed to, extra processes. Those are the 8 areas of waste. What got you there? What are some of the things? And you might find that there's something that's really sort of standing out there. And so focusing in on what we can do about that now, figuring out what needs to change. But think of this, learning from this, right? This is a big part of this, building resilience in construction. If you got a project that doesn't go that well, what could we learn from this? What could we take away from this, both short term, if you're in it, and long term, when you get out of it, right? And of course, when we understand these things and we figure out what needs to change, then that's where we can execute, right? We can try. We can keep that sense of purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. And maybe some of the original goals have had to be adjusted for a variety of reasons. Maybe this project's still not going to be a success when you're done, but learning from it, reframing it instead of just hating it, enjoy it, right? Immerse yourself in it. And rinse and repeat, because this is going to keep happening. Usually on projects that aren't going well, you do get into these negative things that tend to be overwhelming. But if you develop a process and that you can attack it and mitigate much of it, that's going to make it much easier for you and for the team. And think about, what are we learning short and long term, as I said. So quick learning. And again, there's different things you can do for that. It depends how you run your meetings. You can have what we call daily huddles. That gives us very quick feedback so we can be very tactical in our response to what's going on the projects. And that can feed into what's coming up immediately, but it can also feed to stuff that's coming down the pipe or future projects that we can learn from. Accept those failures, right? And don't beat yourself up. That's the stoic part. You don't beat yourself up over stuff, right? You don't beat yourself up. You roll with it. You roll with it. Memento mori is a saying that's often used with the Stoics, right? Understanding that life is not forever, and so knowing that, enjoy this moment that you're in, and don't make it as bad as it needs to be. Accept failures. Things are surprisingly imperfect in the world of construction. Make the best of the current situation. It doesn't mean you give up, right? Like, it means you're really going to go attack this thing, and you're going to work at it, and you're going to be your best, right? You're not going to give up, but you're also not going to let it bring you down completely emotionally. Because we get into these construction projects, and sometimes it can be that way. And if the project's like a 3-year project and you're halfway through, it's pretty tough on you, your family, the people around you for the next year and a half. So this is where you reframe it, and that can be very, very helpful. So I will say, what I'm taking away from Stockdale, the brutal facts, like he was in a prisoner of war. Very difficult for any of us to put ourselves in that position, right? But he was very stoic about it. He came up with a process that worked. He was able to help others through that process. And at the end of the day, it did work out, just like he said it would. Eventually he had the faith that it would work out. And so in the end, you will prevail. Because even if you come out of that project, in the case of construction, and it was deemed to be a failure, if you've learned a lot from it that you can apply to future projects, then that can be great. That can be a positive thing, and you can remember that, and you can bank on that. And so I think those kind of applications of the Stockdale Paradox will help you become more resilient. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It takes practice, it takes time, and it's a lifelong journey. I'm working on it myself all the time, but I think we have had a lot of experience the last few years on this. And I think as a whole, humanity is hopefully getting better at this. I have faith that we are. So I'm Tom Stephenson. If you enjoyed this video, please click the subscribe button, click notifications, click the like, and we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day, and bye for now. Keep the faith.